still under a caution. I want you to go back out on that track and hit the pace car. Hit the pace car? Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other goddamn thing out there. I want you to be perfect. Now go on, go, go, go!
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. I am your host, Gus Manti, and we got a big one this week. We got our first ever Canadian guest, Glenn McDonald with 54 Bust. We're going to be bringing to you that interview here shortly. Before I get any further, let me introduce the other hosts on here tonight. We're going to start with none other than Brian Eckel. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. This was an awesome interview we had with Glenn. I learned so much about Canadian waters and just piqued my excitement even more to get up there, hopefully this coming summer. Can't wait to share that with you all. Just ended up, as we're sitting here, losing my fantasy playoff matchup last night. Tough pill to swallow. Came down to the wire. Both teams scored about 150 points. Matchup for the ages. Shout out JB. And yeah, so moving on to next year. Only up from here. And Max, how was your first round fantasy matchup?
Well, I had the bye, so
Damn.
I did not have to play anybody. I was pulling for you last night, though. Kind of watching how that game was unfolding. I know you had it there for a second. Felt like you had a real chance. So
I had a chance.
hate that for you. Truly.
What Brian, what about the other league there? Did you forget to mention
oh yeah,
whooping I put on you that I might
Yeah.
have scored double? What would you score? Like 70, and I think I scored 140 or something like
Ain't gonna
that.
talk about that or nothing.
Oh yeah, that's
I
all right. Yeah.
didn't give my guys a traditional locker room pep talk before that, clearly, because they did not show up. But
Yeah, you sat a few guys on
hats
accident.
off. Did I?
No, I'm just joking
Oh.
around. Like that would have been funny if you left points on bench or something like that. I don't think you did. I think you
I
gave
got
it your all.
my ass beat. All right, yeah. So enough of my fantasy losses. Max, good to see you on here tonight. What's up with you?
Yeah, pleasure to be on here tonight with you fellas. Not a whole lot going on for me, just gearing up for the holidays. Looks like it's going to be a brown Christmas up in the Northwoods for us. Not sure how those ice conditions are going to be, but looking forward to hopefully putting a hurting on some crappies and some bluegill, doing our traditional Christmas fish fry, try to find some safe ice and see how it goes. But yeah, weekend was good. Tough back-to-back losses for the pack. # fire Joe Barry. Other than that, yeah, just looking to forward to some time off here. Unfortunately, with the pod, we'll probably touch on that a little bit later on in the episode, but also get some good days off from work and enjoy some time up in the Northwoods. So, Gus, I think without further ado, really excited for you guys to hear this one tonight. I had a blast recording with Glenn, just an outstanding guy. So, Gus, you want to fire up that interview?
Yep, can do. All right, everybody, on the line here with us tonight, we have Glenn McDonald from 54 Bust YouTube. Glenn, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good, guys. I really appreciate the invite. And I know we've been kind of chatting a little bit here. I just started following you guys not that long ago, and it was cool to get the invite to come on, and always enjoy talking musky fishing. And even though it's the off season, it always seems to be the time of year that guys they put the rods away and then they look for stuff like podcasts, and that's exactly how I found you guys.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna chop up as much as we can about musky fishing, reminisce on the year maybe, talk about some new things that we might be getting into next year. Yeah, I know that we messaged back and forth a little bit during the late fall season, Glenn, and we were chatting up about trolling and how you're saying that you're kind of new into the game of trolling. I am as well. I know I'm probably going to end up asking some trolling questions because out of the three of us from Muskies on Tap, I am the one that enjoys trolling more than the others, as some people already know. But before we get too deep into anything like that, do you want to give a little background or just something for the listeners to get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. Most people probably know us from the 54 Bus YouTube channel. And beyond that, before we started the YouTube channel, I did a little bit of writing for Musky Hunter magazine, did a little bit of stuff for Hook magazine up here in Canada. So that kind of got my name out there, I guess, or some people might recognize me from that kind of stuff. And actually talking with Greg Thomas at Musky Hunter about doing video stuff, he's the one that kind of put the bug in my ear about do a lake specific video on all the lakes in northwestern Ontario, which is where I live. So for the listeners, we live on the north shores of Eagle Lake. So my wife runs a tackle shop here in town, and we fish all the lakes. So all the lakes you see, all the guys that come up to Canada that want to fish in northwestern Ontario, Lake of the Woods, Eagle, Cedar, the big kind of lakes there. That's where I live. That's where I fish. So that's where most people would probably have heard, of me and of 54 Bust.
Right on. So curious about this. We're going to just start right here with the Canadian deal because, us three have never fished muskies in Canada. Seems like we're really missing out on quite a bit. But, you're talking about like lake specifics up there. I don't know how familiar you are with northern Wisconsin. That's typically where we fish, but like we've talked about it at length on our podcast, how, when you go out into northern Wisconsin, there's like a million different lake options you have, right? For you guys, like there's these select legendary bodies of water that are all kind of right in your backyard. So like, how are you making those decisions on any given weekend trip on like what bodies of water you're going to go out and explore, during that time?
For us, there's a few that we fish more often than not. Living right on Eagle, I don't live on Eagle Lake, but I'm literally 5 minutes away from the main launch. I'm 10 minutes from Temple Bay Lodge, which is one of the most popular lodges. I fish out of there with the owner's son quite a bit. So yeah, we're 5 minutes from Eagle. I'm about 25 minutes from Cedar. We do a lot with all the camps on Cedar Lake. So we spend a ton of time on Cedar. And then the other lakes, Lake of the Woods is about an hour and a bit for us to go. We don't fish Lake of the Woods very much, only because we have so much basically right in our back door. So between Cedar, Eagle, then we have Indian Lake Chain, Canyon Lake, which is where we catch a lot of our tigers. And then Wabigoon's 20 minutes from me. So there's like a multitude of lakes. It's a lot like you guys talk about the Northwoods of Wisconsin. The only difference here is we can go to a lake where there's going to be almost no pressure, where I hear those stories in northern Wisconsin and it's like, oh, there's a good bite on Lake X. You go there and there's 100 boats. Here, a busy day on Cedar is maybe 20 boats total on Cedar on a busy, midsummer week of tourism. Eagle Lake, there's going to be more, but Eagle Lake is it's massive by massive standards. So even when it's busy, there's lots of room to fish.
Yeah. How big is Cedar?
I don't know. We don't really go by the acre size like you guys do. On a map, it's probably a third of the size of a lake like Eagle. And the Cedar system's really cool because it breaks down into three kind of separate lakes. There's the West Arm, which is a lot clearer and deeper, even though it doesn't have trout in it. It would be more like a trout lake. And then the center part of Cedar is more of a green stained water, and it's still deep, but there's a lot of weeds in it. And then the West Arm, Rosie, can you not chew your toy right here while I'm on the podcast? My chocolate lab wants to be in the podcast. So
more than
the center part of Cedar is that green stain and a lot of weeds in it. And then when you go to the east side where like guys like Sarek like to fish, it's more of that classic dirty stained water. So that there's three options right there. So if we have, for example, a really bad south wind, Eagle Lake or Cedar Lake is a great lake for us to go to because most of the launches we can get in with a bad south wind, and you can get out of a lot of the wind with a south wind. If it's north or west, it's a little bit different. So those are the reasons why we kind of change lakes. And then taking Cedar one step further, Peralt Lake is joined by it through a short river system. And it's a huge lake, big open basin. It's one that guys look at on a map and they get intimidated by because it doesn't look like it has a lot of structure. But like typical shield lakes, you got to spend a little bit of time to find the structure. And that actually has turned into one of our favorite lakes.
Yeah, I think I've heard, oh, I think it was your videos actually, maybe podcast too. You've talked about, do you auto chart? I think you said once.
Yeah, we talked about that, I think, on the Backlash podcast.
Oh,
And because a lot of the lakes up here are not mapped very well, especially by the standards you guys would be used to, a lot of the US lakes. So when guys come up here, even a lake like Eagle Lake, as popular as it is, the mapping absolutely sucks. It doesn't matter if you have Navionics or Lake Master. They both show things different, and they both miss huge chunks of the lake, and most of the rocks aren't marked. So everybody that comes up here devotes the time to auto chart. So for us, I've been running birds now for 7-8 years. We have a huge chunk of Eagle Lake already mapped out, and then all the other lakes we talk about, I pretty much have them all mapped out.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely great mapping here in northern Wisconsin, but there's definitely some really, really terrible mapping. Some lakes don't have any at all, actually. And I run auto chart as well. And I even run auto chart on, the lakes that have fantastic mapping. And I found little nooks that just kind of aren't there. And, but I kind of want to ask about, you're talking about Cedar and all those different clarities. And I was assuming they have like different depths and all that. Do you find in a day that some can be hot or not? Because that's something that we either strive for or sometimes struggle with looking for up here. It's like, is there going to be a hot bite on a clear lake, a green lake, a brown stained lake, tannic water, this and that? Like, do you find that on a day-to-day basis up there?
To some degree, I think a lot of it, especially for Americans that come up here, they search out the water that they're familiar fishing. So a lot of guys that come to Cedar, they like the stained water, or they're a little bit turned off by the clear water, especially the Wisconsin guys that are used to fishing that stained water. They'll go to the east side. We don't fish that. We like the clear water. We probably fish the clearest of the lakes probably 80% of the time. We're just more comfortable with it. We're more comfortable fishing deep. But to kind of touch on the question, there's going to be times where a section of the lake is going to be hot versus others, and it's trying to figure out where the bait is in relation to each section of that lake. And for us up here, a big portion of our bait is Cisco's. So Cisco's and whitefish, perch to some degree, obviously, and walleyes, depending on the time of year. But in these bigger lakes with the bigger basins, you're looking for where are the Cisco's or where are the perch and walleye. And when you find them, that's obviously, a big part of the equation. So each section of lake can kind of fire off a little bit different. And then you're going to get sections of the lake where you're just going to have bait up in the weeds in that whole lake. So you almost have to fish all of it. Of course, for us, we have our favorite spots, or the spots that we know a little bit more intimately. So we'll gravitate towards those. But again, it kind of comes down to time of year. And just, I know I listened to you guys' most recent one with the musky metrics, and you guys were talking about that bite that happens one year, and the next year you can almost count on it happening in the same area at the same time with the same conditions. We see that a lot up here, and it's something that I see a lot of Americans that come up. They try to plan their trip on the same week every year, but if they're at the beginning of the year around opener and we have a cold spring, it might be the same week, but the weather pattern might be a week or two either way. And that can really throw off a pattern to something you weren't prepared for. So for us being up here, we're able to kind of fish around that. But it because I think we're so far north, things change slower. And then when they do change, it can be a really abrupt change because our season is so short.
Man, I'm trying to like think of something to go off of that. My mind's going in like a million different directions right now. Just
I got
because
something. I
you
got
got something?
Gus.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
because
for it.
you brought up like a lot of the transports, if you will, of Americans coming up and trying to get this piece of like Canadian fishing. I kind of say this like, hopefully no one gets mad at me, but are there any like funny stereotypes you see of us Americans coming up and trying to tackle these Canadian waters? Do we do anything that's just blatantly dumb? I mean, are you watching guys with USA flags running their boat into rock reefs on Eagle Lake all the time? Or, what I guess is like, you guys are locals, we kind of give shit sometimes to guys from like Chicago that come up to Eagle River, trying to park their rented pontoon boat in a dock slip, all that stuff. We have fun with it, but I'm curious to kind of, hear how you guys view like Americans coming up and just planning a 10-day trip and trying to get after it on like an Eagle Lake or a Lake of the Woods, something like that.
I've seen guys hit rocks. I've seen guys pretty well beach boats on sandbars. I've seen guys fish a chunk of lake that they may have seen a fish, but historically there's nothing there. The biggest thing the biggest thing that we see, I guess kind of twofold. We do see a lot of guys that come back year after year and they got it dialed in. Like a guy like Brian Scaife, he comes up, he's going to fish his section. He's going to adapt to that year after year change, and he's going to get a handle on it. But then I look at other guys that come up here and they think they know what works at home is going to work up here. And shield lakes, big, deep shield lakes, like Eagle, like Cedar, like, sections of Lake of the Woods, they just fish different. And one thing, probably the biggest thing that we see is if there's an open water reef with a jug on it, a white jug, or whatever, the Americans are going to pull right up on top of that thing and they're going to cast to that jug like it's a target. And it's kind of funny because there's a lot of reefs up here. And when we were new, I know what it's like when you're driving around and you're trying to figure out a lake, and we had to figure them out too before there was good mapping. And I pulled up on all the jugs and you cast and you go in shallow and you work your way out. And now, being a much more experienced musky angler, I pull in deep and I work my way up because it's very hard to go backwards. It's hard when you pull up on a spot and you scare the fish that are sitting off that break line. You probably missed that chance on that fish. So that's the biggest thing we see is they probably fish too shallow. And the other thing that we see is, and most of them are unapologetic about it. Even guys that I guide, they're like, why are we so far away from shore? They're like, I want to hit shore with my lure. I'm like, there's no fish up there. And if there is, they're not the big ones that we're after. And so that's kind of a running joke is they're just shore fishermen. They just pick a chunk of shoreline and they just run for miles. And then they wonder why they never catch anything.
You'll have to excuse my laughter, but you're talking pretty much directly to one of our counterparts here, Brian, who's very well known for, getting a little queasy the second the shoreline.
Hey, I'm only that way in Wisconsin where I know where the fish are. I changed my attitude in Canada.
Okay, so with that said, Brian, I mean, Glenn, like, do you have any words of wisdom for us three? Because a plan to Canada is imminent. We got to do it, right? Like we've heard about it for so long. We've seen the videos, your channel, Brian's channel going up to Eagle Lake. Like we want to do it. So, you touched on it in your previous answer, but what's some advice that you'd have to us going up there? One, fishing wise, and then two, is there any, kind of unspoken etiquette of fishing up in Canada that is any different than you think, it might be here in the States?
On the etiquette thing, we've seen a big change from post-COVID to pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, I think we had kind of found a balance where boats were giving boats room. When guys were on a spot, you give them lots of room. Coming out of COVID, I think we got a lot of new anglers and a lot of new people coming up here. it almost changed the generation of people that were visiting Canada for fishing. The baby boomers weren't coming, and it was, their kids and that next generation. So things have kind of changed. And I think I made the joke with Vavrock one time. We were talking about like the chest cam and that first person shooter kind of perspective. It's like the young kids are the running guns and they don't care who's in front of them or behind them. We get those boats that just cut you off, which you never used to see up in Canada. And now we're starting to see that a little bit more. So that's the one side of it. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody, whether they're coming from Manitoba or they're coming from Southern Ontario to fish Shield Lakes, is start slow and start deep. And that, it took us a long time to learn that. Guys like up here, Steve Herbeck's talked about it for years. Cal Ritchie's another really popular guide in our area, and him and I talk a little bit. And he told me, he's like, wherever you think your boat needs to be placed for your cast into whatever the structure is, go one casting distance behind that and then start from there and work your way in. And it took us a few years to get used to fishing deep first and work up the structure. And it's a very hard mindset when you want to hit structure with every cast. You have to be diligent. You may not see fish at first, but sometimes those fish that are sitting off that deep edge, and now with live scope and the technology, you can see them. That's the biggest piece of advice I could give people, is you really got to start slow and really start deep.
So is that advice for year round? Like, is that, are the fish going to be sitting farther off the break than you expect or farther off the shore than you expect year round? Or is there a season when they're kind of pushing up tight?
Short answer is, yeah, year round. This year, pretty much right out of the gate, I was catching fish on a 10-inch Red October tube in 20 feet of water on opening weekend. And my last casting fish was over 16 feet of water with a quad dog in November. So the fish up here, a lot of them will sit off that edge. You're always going to have weed fish all summer long, right into the fall. There's always going to be fish in both areas, but typically what we see, other than like those peak feeding windows like you guys talked about in your last podcast, the big fish are going to be holding out. That just, I think everybody that's fished up here and most of the guides are going to tell you that. And when I say start deep, have your boat placed out, cast up, and work your way in, because if you pull up on a spot too tight and your boat's sitting on top of fish, by the time your lure gets to the boat, you might get that, that quick follow from under the boat. But in most cases, you've spooked those fish off and you never really get a shot at those fish, even though there may be fish sitting shallow. It's a little bit of a slower approach, but it gives you more real estate to fish without spooking fish off of it.
Do you, with that technique or how you place your boat in that sense, are you fishing spots twice, or are you just kind of like letting the wind drift you into a spot? Or, I mean, like, I guess that's kind of hard because it's probably just dependent on the spot. If it's like a little, mid-lake reef as in the shoreline or something like that.
So if it's a mid-lake reef, we would start out so that we're casting and hitting the top of that first break line. So say the first break line is at an 8-foot depth. So the reef, tops out at 2 feet underwater. That first breaks at 8 feet and it drops down to like 12 or 14. We want to be hitting at least the outside edge of that first break. And if we don't encounter any fish, then we'll move in, or at least when we go all the way around 360 around it, we'll try a couple casts up shallow, or one of us would put on a top water, something you can bomb right to the top of an open water reef. So that's a way of kind of covering it in one pass. And then if it's a weed line, we want to start way out on the deep edge, or at least on the outside edge. And something that we do quite a bit, and actually show it in some of our videos, is the front guy in the boat will cast kind of parallel to shore out the front of the boat as opposed to casting in. And if I'm at the back of the boat, I'll cast in while Dave's casting parallel. You're covering both sections in one pass. With guests, that's very hard because you're trying to tell a guest at the front of the boat to just cast into no man's land. they don't believe you. And I think I wrote an article for Musky Hunter or something about that, where the guests at the front of the boat didn't want to do that. And I was just like, you have to just trust me. Like, this is going to work. And he ended up catching 2 fish in one pass with a toad out the front of the boat over 30 feet of water. And then he finished the day with a third one, and they were all in deep water. And that changes whole perspective on where fish are in, relation to depth of water.
Yeah, that's definitely preaching on that parallel cast is super important. I myself fish out of the back of the boat. So like if I'm fishing with, my buddies, Brian, Max and friends, they usually just do it because they kind of know that deal, but that is something that I have to, tell clients here and there. It's like, hey, just, it's like let's try some parallel casts, the perpendicular ones aren't working. But oh, I kind of thought of something that I wanted to go off before when I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I see in your, bringing it back to YouTube, one, your channel is awesome, and I love that you use tons of different lures. Like that's probably, one of the coolest parts of it, that you kind of just showcase a ton of different lures, how to use them, everything like that. But I noticed that usually how it goes in Canada, you see that everyone goes up there, throws a bucktail, they catch fish. But I know you love, your blade with no name, of course, but like you throw a lot of different types of stuff like rubber and jerk baits. And I think that's going hand in hand with how you're saying that you fish deeper than normal, or now you're fishing deeper than normal, and you're catching really nice fish and you're seeing good numbers. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but if you want to like elaborate on, just, oh man, I don't know. I really don't know where I was going with that.
I think I kind of know the question. So that was one thing that
Yeah.
when we started the YouTube channel, we wanted to remain as unbiased as we could in what it was that we use. And we're fortunate, we're sponsored and supported by like a ton of great companies, and we appreciate every single one. But we thought that because of where we have our family cabin on Blue Lake, which is the clear water that you see all our underwater footage videos of, we thought it was a perfect opportunity to get lures in the water and show people a different perspective of how lures look. And that was kind of a bit of a labor of love for us. It takes a lot of time to get all that footage and edit through it, but it turned out to be really popular with the viewers. And it was something that I was like, how do we tie that into what it is we do as anglers? So every time we're out fishing and we're picking a lure, and we don't pick a lure based on who give it to me or who's sponsoring us. I just pick a lure because to us, they're just tools. It's just a tool. Whatever the tool is going to work for the day, that's the tool I want to use. And we'll grab something, we catch a fish on it, and then when we're going to make a video, I'll have a backlog of footage that I can hopefully use and show the viewers, this is how we use that lure, and this is why it worked in this situation. So kind of take it one step further, I think, to where your question was going to go, is being able to remain very unbiased with it, which is hard at times because, yeah, you get companies that they want you to use their stuff. As we fish a different style, fishing deeper, that was a few years ago. We had a really hot summer here in 2018, and it was very hard to get fish up in the weeds. They were there, but they wouldn't bite. So we kept having to fish deeper and deeper. And I started using tubes that year I started using toads, and we started having a lot of luck. And then from there, we just slowly started using more Medusas and then more bulldogs. And then this year I really got into the tubes, and we just crushed on the tubes all summer long. And kind of the back up to the bucktail thing, we posted a video, I think it was mid-July. We had not caught a fish on a bucktail in Canada. Like, you tell people that and they're just like, are you guys either not fishing or you just absolutely suck as anglers? But we hadn't. Like, I literally, the first muskie I caught this year was on an SRJ from Pandemonium, like their little jerk bait, which is awesome.
Mhm.
Love it.
Yeah,
Caught a few
great
fish.
bait.
And then from there, I basically went right to tubes. And we purposely went into a video. I'm like, Dave, we have to catch a fish on a bucktail. So we went up to Cedar and we fished hard that day, and we fished through a storm. We fished through some good weather, bad weather. I'm like, this isn't going to happen. Like I don't know what to do. And I was throwing a blade with no name, and I'm like, I know this thing's going to catch. Finally, I got caught, got the musky off. It was like a 40-inch musky. Put that back, and like 3 casts later, I got a 40-inch pike. And in the video, Dave and I are more excited about a 40-inch pike than we were a 40-inch musky, just because a 40-inch pike up here is a pretty cool fish. But it proved that, yeah, we can do it when you have to, but it's not always the tool that we go to. So we always just try to pick the right lure for the right time. And I guess maybe that's something else that I see, Americans or Manitobans, whoever it is that come into Sunset Country. They come in with a preconceived notion that they're going to throw a bucktail because it's mid-July and it's midsummer patterns. They're throwing bucktail all day and a topwater at night. And that may work, but it may not work. And if you're not flexible, you're going to have a terrible week up here. One of my very good buddies, Kevin Wagner, he spent a week up here in 2020, and first day, I think they got a 39 and a 40 or something like that. So they're like, okay, we kind of figured out a little bit of a pattern, and they stuck with that. And 3 days later, he's like, we're not seeing nothing. I'm like, Kevin, you got to move out. You got to start fishing deeper. But in his head, he couldn't do it. And they ended up with those 2 fish for a week. And we put like 9 or 12 or whatever in the boat because we fished different. And it's so hard to just look at lures as tools, because we all have that little bit of we have a favorite lure, we have a favorite technique, or we have a favorite, whatever it is, and you always rely on that, and it's so hard to kind of get outside of that box.
Well,
Yeah.
while we're on the topic of baits, I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it sounds like you were using a quad dog quite a bit. How does that thing look? Did you have some great success with that this year?
So I wasn't in on the early testing and stuff, but Brad sent me 4, I think, in early November. So he sent me a message. He's like, tracking says it's at your post office. I was like, okay, we're just heading out. I'll stop there. So we stopped. I opened up the box. I'm like, oh yeah, they look pretty cool. And we went out that day. Dave got a 47 trolling. And then we went in, picked up my wife for the afternoon. She was running a sucker. I think Dave was casting. I can't remember what. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to put this quad dog on. And like literally 20 casts later, I got like the fattest 44.5 that we got all year. But what I like about it, yeah, it moves a ton of water. It's a heavier lure. It's going to get down a little bit deeper. And it surprisingly, even with that lip that it has on it, it doesn't glide like a Medusa, which a lot of guys love that glide of a Medusa. That's always the thing that's annoyed me about a Medusa, is it glides. It doesn't want to go nose down like a toad or a tube. That's when those things get hit. And that's why guys put tons of weight on a Medusa to get it to go nose down, and then they work great. It almost seems like this is that bait, just better, because it does that already, and it moves a ton of water. And in the testing, I heard that those things got hit head first all the time. That's exactly what happened on ours. So I think for us, it's going to be the style of bait that fishes exactly where we want it to fish in the water column. So I think it'll fit our style of fishing really, really well.
Yeah, I'm
So-
excited to get my hands on one, because I'm the same way with Medusas. They just kind of blimp through the water. I like more of an erratic rubber bait, and so it's cool to hear about the quad dog for sure.
We did do a quick little short video where we compared them. I did get a little bit of underwater footage of the quad dog late in the year. It's not a perfect comparison, and it's not meant to be, one or the other. I think both have, great things for them. Medusa's, it's a legendary bait. I just think that because the quad dog looks similar, social media has made it this head-to-head battle. And sometimes it's not fair when new things come out and people just compare them like that. So what we do with our channel is try to take those things and let's be as unbiased as we can, get them in the water, show the viewers, and let them kind of decide. But I do think if you like that little bit more erratic bait, something that's more like a tube, you're going to love the quad dog.
That's good to hear because that is definitely what we like. And I was going to ask one or two more things on the quad dog. With that, is it pretty nose heavy? Does it nosedive on its own if you don't say tune it at all?
Yeah, it pretty much runs nose down. Not as heavy nose down as say a tube, but it definitely does go nose down. But the tails keep it on I would say a slower descent than say a tube.
Okay. And does it come with a standard harness, like a straight harness, or is it like the pro dog flexible
No, it's like
harness?
a pro dog flexible. It's actually, if I should have brought one in, we could have talked about it, but it's super flexible. Like it almost feels like there's no harness at all in it. It's like ultra flexible. So again, that was one of the things with the Medusa. Everybody grabs a Medusa and bends it to give it that little bit of form so that it'll roll down. This, you don't have to do that. This thing just wants to roll.
That's pretty nice.
I think it's going to be a really cool bait. On our upcoming bait of the year video, it's definitely going to be our pick for, best bait that we've seen in a while. Even though I only fished it briefly in the fall, anytime we get a casting fish in early November up here, that's good for us. And for that thing to be like 20 casts in and catch a fish, I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a winner in my books.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think everybody was kind of yearning for something new to come out in the musky industry bait wise. And we've kind of speculated on where baits could kind of go from here. You know what I mean? Like it feels like they've really covered a lot of the bases of possibilities on what we're able to even throw as anglers. But who knows? I mean, I'm sure in 2000 people weren't thinking we were going to be throwing, Magnum 2-pound rubber baits and huge swimming dogs that look like Cisco's and stuff like that, or double 12s. So, speaking of baits, because we're on the topic, I do want to pay you compliment. You have probably one of the more badass bait caves I've seen on the YouTube channel. How did that get started? How did you build it to what it is now? Just kind of always curious to hear about the bait caves, because we got a lot.
Envious.
I know Gus has got a lot of baits sitting around in cardboard boxes. Some are hanging up, and I'm like, God, it'd be sweet to have a bait cave.
Well, so I got a little garage. I have an attached garage where the boat is, and then a little shop. It's just it's a bona fide man cave because I can't do anything in there basically. I got a couple snow machines, a quad in there, and just musky gear.
Nice.
But just years of accumulating like everybody. And a few years ago, as we kind of started the YouTube stuff, I'm like, need to come up with a better backdrop. I wanted to take the YouTube production side more serious. I wanted to get decent lighting, have a backdrop that looks like it fits the vibe of a channel. So because my wife runs a tackle shop and everything's on a pegboard and I'm used to just hanging the stuff at the shop with her, I'm like, why don't I just do that at home? Like that seems easy enough. So I thought, okay, how do I do it like a lot of guys and just put one thing? Excuse me, my phone barking at me. So I thought, do I just do one bait on each peg like a lot of guys do, so it looks like you have a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
I tried that. There's just absolutely no way that was ever going to work. So each peg's got like 5 or 6 or whatever on it, as much as I thought it would hold. So I started with a 4x8 sheet of pegboard, and that clearly wasn't going to be enough. So then I went to the wife's shop. I got a couple display units, like big, like they're 6 feet tall. They rotate, started hanging rubber on there. And I'm like, okay, these things are going to fall over. So this year, I went out, I got a couple pallets and I put those on one end, and the pallets hold the rubber perfect. So I hung all the rubber on there and posted a quick picture. I got overwhelmed with comments and questions, and people want to see what's on there. So at some point this winter, we'll do kind of a walkthrough video. But again, for me, it's not about bragging. It's not about, mine is bigger than yours. It was a cool way to get everything out of all the lake woods, get them on a wall, see what's good. There's some that I had a couple old grandmas. I'm like, this thing is just garbage. It's cracked. It's broken. The hooks are rusty. Why do I have this? Like, chuck it. So it was a way to go through everything. And yeah, let's face it, it's a cool backdrop to a YouTube channel. We always joke that there's a lot of money tied up in there. I've spent a lot on it, but I've been very fortunate in what we do, that we do get a lot given to me. And that, again, that's not bragging. I appreciate every single lure that any company sends to us. And we do everything in our power to try and repay it back 10 times over by getting them in the water, showcasing them, catching on them. But the man cave thing, it's cool. I think when you're a kid, my little nephew comes over and he's like 5-6 years old. He's like, Uncle Glenn, you got to give me a musky lure. I'm like, okay, let's go pick one. And he's like, I want that blue one up there. I'm like, well, that's a supernatural lip lock. You were definitely not having that one. Let's see if we can find something over on the bass side here. Musky anglers are like kids. We like to go into a tackle shop and feel and touch stuff. It's our toys, right? So to have them all up on the wall, it's a cool way of showcasing them, and it just looks cool. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, and people seem to like it. So it's an addiction. Anybody listening to this already knows that. If they're this deep into the pool, they know it's an addiction. And whether you got 20 lures on your wall, 100, or you got 40 something thousand, like I probably have, it's an addiction. It is what it is.
We always seem to fall into that trap. Like, usually as we get into the depths of winter here and as we start getting close to musky season, we start racking up baits. And I think last spring we started the no new baits trend within our group chat. Like, nope, we're not doing it, not pulling the trigger.
That was after
we'd send them weekly.
I keep sending you guys slips of me buying baits at 2 a.m. after I had too many drinks. All of a sudden, Jeff from TRO is getting an email from me at 2:15 on a Friday night.
He's probably sending it out at 4.
Bulldogs.
Yeah. The problem with baits and being a musky angler is that we always look for what's going to be that next thing. And like you guys had just said, the quad dog, is that going to be the next thing next year? It's going to catch a ton of fish because it's new and guys are going to be throwing it. So it's going to work. It's like when the Fat Bastard came out, my wife was one of the first ones in Canada to get one. She crushed on it all year. It's whatever new bait comes out is going to do good, but you can only throw one bait at a time. And it for us, by the time July comes around, Dave and I are down to about, I could literally go with 6 baits. And we did a video where we only took 3 baits. That's all we had in the boat. We took 3 baits each and we caught 3 fish that day. You can do that. It just, as a musky angler, you're just like, well, I haven't caught a fish in 10 minutes. I got to change my lure. Like that, it's easy to get caught up in that.
Brian's like 10 minutes. Wait, what?
Yeah.
No, I like that though. I mean, like there was a few times this summer where Gus would go out on a guide trip and I would take our little boat out of our cabin and I would go in, to our big tackle box or whatever. And I didn't want to like build a whole box. So I would just take out like 3 or 4 baits. I mean, it's really nice to have options, and it's kind of fun to do stuff like that because it gets you back a little bit to your roots, like on what used to work, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where it's amazing that sometimes when you recycle these baits from a while back, like they almost become the new bait again, where it's like, man, muskies probably haven't seen this in a while. So I don't know if you do that or often, or if you're kind of, keeping things relevant, but I know for us, like we've fell in love with like crane baits, this year, stuff like that. I mean, just some kind of older school stuff. It's been great.
Actually, I got a really good story about that. So probably 7, 8 years ago, my kid's school bus driver, he used to be a guide on Eagle Lake, and his name's Willie. Great guy. He was a great angler out there. So he always stops at my wife's shop before he goes to pick the kids up from school. And he says to David and I, he's like, are you guys using Suics? David and I are like, we have some. He's like, are you using them? we're like, no. He's like, you guys should use them. We started using them, and we went on a tear. It was almost like whenever I put on that silver jailbird Suick, it was like, you just pull your lines out, boys, because like shit's gonna happen.
That's getting
And
eaten.
it was crazy because it was like nobody up here had thrown Suicks for like 10 years. And we found some old stock silver jailbird and gold jailbird. And that's where anybody that knows me or follows me on social media knows I got this thing for this silver jailbird pattern. That's kind of our kind of custom or whatever you want to call it pattern. And it all started with that single Suick. I still have it. It's a 9-inch weighted Suick. Thing's probably caught 50 fish, and it's sitting high and center on the bait wall. And people, when they want to send us lures, they're like, we'll do it up in your silver jailbird pattern. I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be, but that's really cool. But yeah, it's kind of going back to the question. We always go back to stuff. Like after a while, we'll be like, hey, we haven't tried, whatever this is in a while, or we haven't tried that lure. Let's go back to that. This year, Dave pulled out a pacemaker, which was something we hadn't thrown in a while. And his stepson caught a musky on it, basically first day out. So it's sometimes new isn't necessarily better. It's about knowing which tool to use at the right time.
100%. How did that jailbird color get started? I think you've touched on it on other podcasts, but I'd be curious to hear it firsthand now that we got you.
So the first Suick that we kind of found, I think I found it at my wife's shop. It was like old stock, and it was a silver jailbird. So it's silver with the black bars. And I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool. And the orange with black dot Suick was really good for us. That's like a really popular Canada color. I just started using the silver one, and it worked and it worked and it worked. So I called Michael Suick. I'm like, I'm going to need to get a couple more of these. He's like, oh, that's discontinued, that color. It didn't sell very well. So we discontinued it. I'm like, well, can you do a run of them? He's like, yeah, I'll do another 12. So I think we did 12 wood and 12 plastic. I sold or gave away most of them, but I kept that very first one. And then after that, every time I would get like a custom lure from somebody, because they were watching us on socials or this was before YouTube, they'd be like, hey, I'll do you one in that silver jailbird. So it just kind of became our kind of unofficial custom pattern. And to take it one step further, this year I reached out to Brad Rue and I was like, hey, Brad, let's do a custom color. And I want to do it based on the silver jailbird, but I want it to have, a little bit of orange in it. I'm like, what if we come up with a color? We won't name it, and I'll hold a contest on our socials, and we'll get our, fans, followers, whatever, to do it, to try and name it. It blew up. We had like 300 and some suggestions. We ended up calling it Sunset Jailbird. It was one of Brad's most popular colors. He's updated it for show season. It's going to look just absolutely killer. And then another take on that, instead of doing it with orange, we did it with some kind of green chartreuse, and we called that one Carbon Perch, and it just looks killer too. And they've updated that one. So to be able to have almost a signature color pattern or something you're known for, and then be able to take it to a big company like Musky Innovations, produce it, and then have people buy it and tell you that it works. It's like a feel-good story, right? Like you can't help but, like that. So it's just cool that it started on a single Suick, and then it's grown to something that we're kind of known by.
Yeah, that's pretty badass. That's awesome. So I don't want to change gears too much here, and I'm sure we'll get back to some more Canadian fishing, but have you fished in the States much or at all?
Never. I've had some opportunities to go down. It just hasn't worked out. Actually, a few years ago, we were down in Park Falls picking up an order at St. Croix, and we went down to John's at Lake X Lures. And it was the night before Wisconsin opener, and that had all the makings of turning into like a week-long bender. He's like, he was calling. He's like, I'll find a boat and stuff for you guys. You got to stay. I'm like, if I stay tomorrow, I won't be going home till Tuesday. There's a good chance I'll be divorced. So no, I haven't had a chance. I've talked with guys like Matt Vavrock going down maybe early. It's very hard to leave here to go down there in the summer. So it's one of those things. I'll have to make it kind of a destination trip, maybe like a Green Bay trip, or do something outside of our normal season here, because it's hard to leave here in mid part of summer.
Yeah, I don't blame you there at all, because you got the big fish opportunities and the numbers as well. And I was just listening to on the Hunks podcast that you were on. You were talking about next summer potentially doing a YouTube series of just going after a legal, a Canadian legal, which is what your YouTube name is after. And I'll speak for Brian and Max, and I know that we would love to see something like that. So I don't know if you want to touch on that anymore, if that's in your YouTube plans for 2024.
So it's something that we definitely talked about. I go through phases where I get into something, I go all in. For a while, me and my buddies had a garage band and we played all the local bars and stuff. And like that was it. We were right into it. And after 5 or 6 years, I got bored of that. Right now, I'm like all in on musky fishing. And I know that eventually you just can't keep going at the top, not the top level, because I got like a full-time job, a wife and family. I'm a bona fide weekend angler. I go out a lot more during the week than I should, but you can't keep it up forever. So for me, something I need to change, raise the stakes. So like I told the guys on the musky hunks, that I think the logical thing for us, because I've never caught a legal and they don't come easy up here in Canada. Like there's only a handful of over 54 caught on eagle every year, couple on Lake of the Woods, couple on Lac Sewell, and maybe 1 or 2 on Cedar. So like they don't come easy. So I don't know if I'll do it next year, but eventually here we are going to do something where it's going to be just the hunt for 54, and we'll document it vlog series style, that today this is what we're using. We strike out at the end of the day, we'll make it into a story. And I kind of tried it this fall when we got into our fall season, and kind of to circle all the way back around to the trolling stuff. We didn't have a really good supply of suckers this year, so we kind of resorted to trolling because that's all you can do when it's super cold. We went fishing on Monday. I aired that video Tuesday, and we did it kind of a vlog series, by date, and it proved super popular. People were really into it because it's like next day coverage. So that's something that we're going to try next year. I think when we start in June, is like those first couple of weeks, I want to get the stuff out really quick so that it's very current, so that people are coming up. They'll know kind of what's happening. I think that's something that is missing in musky fishing. And then that'll help us kind of go into the hunt for 54. I do think that next year I want to split my time between guiding, fun fishing with friends and family, and split it up somewhat so that I leave myself like 33% of the time where we're going to go out on the West Arm Eagle, which is like super clear, needle in a haystack kind of water. And we're going to just get a hunt for 54. And like I made the joke with the musky hunt guys. I'm like, if we get it in the net and we put the stick in, or we look at it and we're like, it's 50, we're just dumping it. Like if you're going to go for the hunt for 54, you have to go all in. You can't be holding pictures of fish that are 50, because that's not truthful to what you're trying to do. So whether I'll have the balls to do that or not, I'm not really sure. But I think that's what needs to happen there, is that you're going in with a single purpose, and anything less than 54, it'd be hard not to hold a 53 up. I'm not going to freaking lie.
Yeah.
Even though oh my God.
This sounds like so badass. And I know if I ever like want to try and do this, I'll be on day 2 and be like, what am I doing? What?
Well, don't we all? We actually, this fall, we had some pretty good days, actually really good days, but you get off the water after a 3 or 4 fish day, you're back in the truck and you're like, damn it, that could have easily been like a 6 or 7 fish day. And it almost feels like you failed when you caught 3 or 4 fish. And I'm just like, are we that jaded that that's how we feel? And we know we're fortunate to live where we live, and we're fortunate that we've caught a lot of fish, but it's not lost on us. And you got to take a little piece of humble pie and say that, yeah, you had some good luck today, but tomorrow you could go out and get nothing. And we get lots of 0 days. Those are very hard to show on YouTube, so people don't see those days. So we're like anybody else. We have plenty of trips where we get big fat goose eggs, but because you don't show those days, people think that, oh, those 54 guys, they catch fish every time out. Every video, they got 3 fish. Well, that's just not the reality of it. And I think that social media only shows the good stuff. You can only look at a sunset picture so long, and you're bored of it because that those guys didn't catch any fish. So there's gotta be a better way of telling a story and having it, more real life. And that's something that we're actually going to try and do with the channel. And I've been hashtagging this is real life, because I want it to be, this is us. This is, more how we are as people. And last year, even Dave and I started acting more like ourselves on camera, because if you guys have ever fished with a camera beside you, even when you don't think you're changing, you're always a little bit conscious of it. So this year we just tried to be more ourselves, laugh and joke. And for us, the fishing it's about just getting out there. It's not always about catching fish. And I think we always lose sight of that sometimes you're like, if we don't catch, it feels like a complete failure, and it shouldn't.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit with on camera fishing and like showing your true colors. Cause we started running GoPros, was it last year? Kind of officially, we started really running the GoPros. Mm-hmm. And I can definitely agree that like when the camera's on, you might act a little bit different, whatever. But we kind of went through a growing phase or some growing pains with filming, where it almost seemed like, the more inappropriate thing we would say, the better chance there was that we'd catch a fish. Because it was like the second somebody would say something that was completely out of pocket, it would be like, oh, got one. And it's like, well, we got to run the 5-minute loop. And now I got freaking Brian talking about, X, Y, and Z. And that's not going to get onto YouTube and last for more than 5 minutes. So, or you're showing your friends or your parents and you're like, why is the volume all the way down? It's, oh, well, it was all muted up until the fish actually got caught. I'd say the only time like that I really truly acted like myself on when we were running cameras was during tournaments, because I think you just kind of let it all go or whatever, and you don't really think about the camera rolling. And there's a pretty embarrassing clip of me when I caught a big fish in a tournament last summer. Gus actually had to shush me because I was just going too crazy.
There was a lot of boats around us.
But so when you talk about like you guys get more comfortable, I mean, obviously it was something you noticed. And is that just like, all right, we're gonna like let it loose a little bit more, we're gonna include a little bit more of the vlog style conversations, like this is just what we do out here? Because I personally love seeing that stuff. I think it's really fun, like the YouTube content you guys do. It's great to see the fish and hold it up and it's beautiful and everything. But you watch the video for the other, 12 or 14 minutes. You want to see what goes into it, the banter, the ups, the downs. Like that's the cool stuff, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that, because I just finished editing what's going to be one of the best fish from last year. It's going to air early in January. I put a lot of time into the storytelling aspect of it, and some interview style clips of Rich and I talking about the day and talking about the fish and showing the day before when we struck out, and making the actual catch not really the star of the show, but there's more to it that goes on with any musky fishing trip. And this year David was more vocal in the videos, and he's very witty, and the people that have watched the videos, they know Dave's my most, he's out there fishing with me the most, and then my wife, and then my brother-in-law Richie. They're kind of my sounding board. So anything that I'm going to do, I kind of pass it by them, and they'll either give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And we talked about it last year in the off season that we needed to show more of our, our true colors. And it kind of started last year. Kyla caught a 52.5 on a sucker late in the season, and you can't hide that emotion. There's no hiding that. Like, that just comes out. We were all stoked. I looked in the net and I was like, well, that's a big freaking fish. But you never want to say 50, right? Because she had never caught one. So I'm like, well, it's 4 foot. It's all a 4 foot. And then when she brought it out of the net and it's not stopping, I'm like, oh, this is big fish. And when you show that emotion and people see it, it's infectious, right? When you see that type of emotion. And we get a little bit of backlash because we don't show a lot of emotion when we catch fish. And it's not on purpose, because I want to show we enjoy catching every single fish, but you hook one way out from the boat and we reel it in, and Dave and I got our routines. We get it in the net. We do a quick fist pump or whatever, and then we go through our routine of filming, which, let's face it, it does take a little bit of that emotion in the moment away, because you're filming. But it's not that we don't enjoy that fish or we're happy. It's just that when you do get to a point in whatever sport you're in and you've hit a plateau, a high plateau, it's not that you don't take it for what it's worth. Just sometimes it's not as exciting as it should be. And when you've caught as many 40-inch fish as probably all of us, those aren't the ones that get you excited. It's not that you're unhappy to catch it. It's just that it might not be the one. And, some people, they're like, well, I don't get how you can't be excited to catch any muskie. And I was in a band and I played guitar. And I remember when I first picked up a guitar and I started learning, I was like, I'll never learn how to play the Sweet Child of Mine solo or whatever song it is. And when you learn how to play it and you play it on stage, then it's whatever. If you're a golfer and you all of a sudden you're playing golf at par on every course you go to, it's just not as exciting for you. You need to challenge yourself. And I think as muskie anglers, we all have a different bar that we're trying to reach. And as a new muskie angler, if it's a 36 that's your personal best and you're excited, frick, I want to hear that. If it's 52 that gets you excited, I want to hear it. And it's just one of those sports that there's no set bar for everybody. Maybe that 50-inch mark, but it shouldn't be that we don't celebrate the 36s for the other guys.
Yeah, I think social media has kind of ruined the reputation of a 50 a little bit. I mean, I'm just so freaking numb to seeing pictures of big fish these days. It's still amazing. It's unbelievable, right? But like, I think like you were saying, like you as yourself has to set those bars and goals or whatever. Because otherwise, if you're just looking at pictures of other people and saying, okay, that's my bar, like it's going to be tough to compete, because, if you're refreshing your feed and you follow 1,000 people on Instagram or whatever it is, and 990 of them are muskie or fishing accounts, you're going to see a lot of pictures of big fish. So do you think like the challenge of doing like a 54 vlog type style is maybe your way of saying, okay, like I got to just do something a little different to like challenge myself to kind of just, reinvent the wheel or get more excited about this at all? I mean, do you feel like you've plateaued a little bit in the muskie industry?
No, I don't know that I've really plateaued. We've definitely put a lot of energy into the YouTube side of it. And like I said earlier, it takes a long time to film all the stuff underwater at our cabin. You got to devote a whole day to that. And people that view it, they don't see all the hours behind it. That's the same with any YouTube channel. It doesn't matter what niche it's in. But we put a lot of time into that. One thing that we take a lot of slack for is we don't catch a lot of quote unquote big fish, because we don't fish eagle predominantly. So we get the the slack from some of the guides out there. Oh yeah, you guys catch lots of fish, but they're all 40s, which is untrue. But there's always this stigmatism that if you're not putting a picture of a 50 up every time, that you're not worthy. And to me, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm old enough that that little ego stuff doesn't bother me. My goal is to help more people catch more fish and, come up to Canada and hopefully be prepared for it as much as we can show them through a breakdown or through a video or through the techniques that we do. But I do find personally that I want to challenge myself. And I've been telling people for a long time that somebody's going to come into the YouTube musky world and they're going to take it mainstream. There's been a couple guys that have been close. Ben Stone's really, really close. Like, he's got the skills to take it to another level, the fishing and the videography. I think Kyle Fregis from Cabbage Dragon Media, his videography is like probably the best in the musky industry. He could take it there, and both of those guys, they seem very humble and down to earth, and they can, people can relate to them. So I think somebody's going to take this sport to that mainstream kind of media level. There's guys like Doug Wagner. The guy just catches giant after giant after giant, which is awesome. But I don't know that his video style is going to be the one that takes it there. Ours isn't. I know, like, it's not exactly the right style, but I want to show more of that real life stuff. And if we can do like the challenge, I don't know if you guys watch any vlog stuff on YouTube, but Ryan Trahan did the penny series where he started with one penny on one coast of the States, and he had to work his way across the United States by just trying to make money every day. And he started with a penny. It was so compelling. And how can you put that in the musky world? It's like, I'm going to start with like one bucktail and I'm going to go after a 54, whatever the case is. It was our 3 lure challenge was a form of that. Next year we're going to take, a Medusa and a quad dog, and Dave and I, that's all we're going to fish that day. We're going to do something different, because for us, it's not just about the catching fish. It's about going out, having fun, and trying to show people what it is that we do when we're just goofing off, listening to heavy metal music in the boat and just being two guys. Like, that's our stress dump time, and we don't try to take ourselves too serious. So I think that helps. And I think a lot of people see that if they're just a weekend angler, they can, look at us and be like, hey, those guys are doing what we do.
Hell yeah. No, that hits home for me for sure. I mean, I think the vlog stuff is extremely compelling, especially in the musky world. I definitely second the Kyle and Ben, 2 guys that we had Ben on our podcast, hope to have Kyle on in the future, but I've talked with him a good bit. Great dudes. Real quick, before we keep going on the musky stuff, I do have to ask about the band, because obviously, right? Like, you guys covering music, you got your own stuff when you were doing it. What was like a typical set for your, playing at these local bars?
It was all like pretty well a mix of classic rock to pretty well top 40. We had a singer that could cover pretty well anything from like AC/DC to ZZ Top. Like, literally, he could cover that. We could do Journey songs. We could do Bon Jovi. We could do CCR. We did a bit of all of it. We would take new songs off the radio and kind of rock them up our way. So at the time we were doing like some of the Lady Gaga stuff because the people love that. We would do some of the country songs and rock them up. We did a lot of everything, but kind of like the musky stuff, I got bored with just doing regular old stuff. So we would try to kind of rock it up our way, and we change some arrangements around, and it was fun. Like, we were definitely a party band. So if we went to the local bar on New Year's Eve or whatever, it was going to be a party. We had a few originals, and we actually had one there that we played pretty steady and actually got a little bit of a following for it. People are actually asking for it by name. So that was fun too. And that was, another 15 minutes of fame in a different lifetime. And I missed it. I missed being up on stage, and that, people ask, well, you don't seem to have any problem talking or being on video. And I'm like, I was in a band for a bunch of years, and you're up on stage, and yeah, it's nervous until you play the first chord, and then away you go. And I think that's anybody who's, in the public eye or on camera, that's kind of the same way.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know when we go ahead, Gus.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that it's the same thing with us starting this podcast. It was just gonna be us chopping up musky fishing, and all of a sudden, got a little traction, and I grew up not having great, skills at public speaking and all that, and this is definitely helping and an eye opener for sure. But
Was that when we started the podcast the first time? It took us like 17 takes just to do the first 3 sentences.
yeah, like how to do an intro, and it was gnarly. Our first episode actually never aired.
True.
We shot one
Learn it
before we
the
went
easy way.
to we shot one before we went to before I went to Cave Run, and that just didn't work. I was trying to edit while I was down there, and all I wanted to do was hang out, and editing was taken away from that. So I texted Brian and Max. I'm like, sorry, dudes, this episode's just not airing.
Is that saved in the files anywhere? Can we eventually leak that?
Oh, we're gonna sound so bad. That's not gonna.
You know
Yeah,
what?
it probably is.
I look back on our first couple YouTube videos and they're absolutely horrible. But you know what? You learn and you move up. Everybody that's listening to this, their first couple muskie trips, unless they lucked out and got a 47.5 like your guest there the other day,
Yeah.
you completely suck on your first couple trips. Kyla and I went a couple years without hardly catching a fish. Like if we caught a fish, I mean, we were so pumped and we struggled and struggled and struggled. And eventually you start to put the pieces together, and then you get to a point where we're at, and we're fortunate. We catch a lot of fish, but you don't get there overnight. You got to put the hard work in. You got to put the time in. The YouTube, just like you guys with the podcast, it doesn't just happen overnight. You kind of got to find your feet. I like what you guys are doing. I like a lot of these newer podcasts are coming out, and you guys are talking to average guys that people can relate to. I think that's huge because the muskie industry's always been a little bit top heavy because it was an exclusive industry for a long time, but now it's a much wider industry and there's more people into it. And the guys that were at the top for so many years, they're kind of getting older, slowly drifting out of the industry. And it's newer guys like Ben Stone, like Kyle. There's other guys that are coming into the industry that are going to take it to the next level. And just having podcasts like yours and the Muskie Hunks talking to just more average guys, I think it's just super important for the industry. And talk to any company owner and they'll all tell you they want this industry to be more inclusive and less exclusive. It's a hard sell because of social media and the pictures of the 47s that look like 56s, but you just keep pushing. Eventually we'll get there.
I mean, yeah, rising tide lifts all boats, right? I mean, that's kind of the game plan and goal that we have. It's like the more people that get excited about muskie fishing, the more it's going to benefit for everybody. There's going to be more innovation. There's going to be, I think the one maybe downfall that some older people might get mad about, or maybe even people our age, is the more people get into it, there is a finite amount of water in the world. But I do think that there's plenty of pie to go around, and
you can always bump the stocking numbers up.
You can always bump the stocking numbers up. The more money that gets into the industry, the better the fishing will continue to be, in my opinion. And I mean, I think it's just going to be great. The more widespread it gets, I think, it's just going to create a foster a good environment into the industry. And that would be great. I mean, like, look at the bass industry and how crazy that is. I mean, it's a totally different fish. And it, not comparable at all. But at the same time, it's like you see how much money gets poured into those tournaments, into those products, and all that stuff. The videos are crazy. There's no reason. I don't know if the muskie industry will ever get to that point. But like you were saying, with people taking it more mainstream, I mean, I could definitely see just with how many more people are doing the videos, us starting the pot, just doing stuff like this it feels like it's becoming more of an inclusive industry, and that's a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. And I see it at my wife's shop. I see it talking to all the company owners, and we go to the Minnesota show the last couple of years, and just the people that come up and talk to us because they've seen us on YouTube or they see us on socials, with all the positive, feedback that we get on what we're doing. I can only control what I do and, my little slice of the pie. But for us, it's all about, trying to help people catch fish. It would be easy to just go out there and only do it for yourself, but that's self-serving, right? We all want to help people. And for me at heart, I just want to see people that get into the industry, and whether they only catch one fish and they're out because they're happy, if that's all they want out of it, I'm okay with that too. I just want to see people come in, enjoy it, have fun, and try to do things properly, ethically, and just remember that it is about fun. It's not just about that picture of a fish. It's about everything that goes with it. And that's why I think for us, the way we do it, we just want to show that there's real life behind it. It's not just that 2 seconds you cast, you catch a big fish. Because if it was that easy, I think we'd all be millionaires
or bored to death. I mean, eventually,
or bored
right?
to death. Yeah,
You could just these things that easy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, what goes into it is just it's the best. I mean, I look forward to our weekends with all of our buddies so much. It's so much fun. I mean, just getting out there and shooting the shit, that's 98% of it for sure.
Okay, so Glenn, I'm going to ask you this for looking back on 2023. Could you narrow it down to 2 or 3 of your favorite baits on the year? And maybe the ones that like produced the most, or maybe the ones that you thought looked the best and you look forward to using again next year? Just kind of a little list there.
I am in the middle of editing a video, which will probably air on January 1st, which is our baits of the year. And our past 2 years, those have been some of our most popular videos. So I don't want to totally give it away here.
Don't spill the beans. No need.
Anybody who's watched the channel knows basically the lures that we use. I'll just mention kind of a couple standouts that they're going to be on the list, but they may not be right at the top. But one that really surprised me that I mentioned early was the SRJ by Pandemonium. And Kevin sent us a couple, and I tried it. I love Dive and Rise, obviously going back to the Suic talk. And that thing caught first day out. I got a beautiful tiger on opener, caught a bunch of fish over the early half of the year with it. And that lure just stood out to me that you can do a bunch of stuff with it. You can work it a bunch of different ways. It was one that I wasn't really prepared for. I thought, oh, it's another Dive and Rise. Like we have, I don't know how many in the industry, but that one really stood out. And that's one that I'm looking forward to using next year. Another one that, again, no surprise for us, is a Bondi Royal Orba. And we always use the junior size, but we started adding a spinner bait arm on the front of it. And that was amazing. We caught a ton of fish on that, and it's just the Bondi Royal Orba is such a versatile bait. You can use it like a bucktail. You can use it like a bulldog. You can count it down. You can do a bunch of things with it, but people look at it because it looks like a cigar with a tail. Nobody uses it. So I highly recommend that if you're looking for something that's easy to throw and easy to use, a Bondi Royal Orba, and just get the junior size because it won't kill you and it catches a shit ton of fish, like absolutely does. And the one other one that nobody will be shocked will be a Blade with No Name. That thing, since we got it in, I guess it would have been late 2021, it's been hands down the best bait that we've had. 2023, we had talked earlier that we hadn't caught a fish on a blade bait until July. I used 2 blade baits all season. Both were Dadsons. One was a 3-bladed one that Johnny built for me. It's called Old McDonald. Go figure. And I got a really nice one on Eagle on that. And then the rest of the ones I got were all on a single blade with no name, basically just black on black with a red dangle. And I think at last count that had 23 or 24 fish at the end of the year on it.
Jesus.
And
Wow.
that's it. I used 2 blade baits and basically caught 25 fish on blade baits, and 23 or 24 of them were on a blade with no name. It has became the second most requested bait from Dadson, only behind his bone saw. And it's one that it actually should have never happened the way it happened. I'm not even sure how to explain how it ended up getting this infamous kind of rap to it.
Please try if you can, because I mean, first of all, you're rocking the Blade with No Name shirt. I would definitely buy
dancing
that
hat.
shirt and the dancing hat. It's definitely been a bucktail that looks really, really sweet to us. I would love to purchase one in the future if I would ever be able to. But how did the buzz get started in your opinion?
So inside the Dadson community, that bait kind of came around, and I think I got proto number 4 of it, and I got it for like $40. It was just another Dadson. We were like, yeah, whatever. Got it home, put some hooks on it, tried it out, and I was like, oh, this thing definitely, it's just anybody that gets a Dadson blade bait that Johnny's tuned in the Niagara River, they run turnkey and they have a grind to them, and it just grinds. It just has this grind that it's hard to explain. You feel it in the rod tip. It just has a grind. The way the dangle is on a clevis, it has more flash than just being on a swivel. And the first year we were catching fish on it left, right, and center. And on the video, we're like, and we caught it we weren't sure what to call it, because inside the Dadson community, it had a name, but we didn't want to use it on the videos because Johnny keeps a lot of stuff tight. So we were like, it's on the Dadson with the dangle blade. We didn't know what to say. And then at the end of the year, I asked Johnny and his wife, Sam, I'm like, we're going to put out a little trailer video because we did so well on this bait. What do I call it? And they're like, whatever you want to do. And I was just like brainstorming some names. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do like a movie trailer, I need like a really cool movie trailer kind of title. And I was like, I'm a James Bond fan. Like, who doesn't like those kind of movies? I'm trying to think of animation for the video. I'm like, a blade with no name. And it was almost tongue in cheek, and it stuck. And over the course of the winter, they got inundated with requests to produce it. And to the best of my knowledge, Johnny's never sold one to the public. I've got probably 3 or 4 batches in groups of 6. I've probably gave away 8 or 9 of them. I've sold a few. I've auctioned a few. I've, raffled to our followers. And I actually right now I have 3 of I would call them kind of our super fans, or our most devoted followers. I'm getting 3 of them done up for them. I'll get an additional one matching for each of them that I'll keep. So it's turned into this thing that is bigger than what it was. And yeah, lots of guys are like, it's just like any other bait. I'm like, well, it is, but it just produces so many fish. And I know if you're just going to pick one bait and throw it all year, you're going to catch fish on it. But are you going to catch 23 or 24 fish? I'm not sure. And it's a confidence bait for me. Guys like Matt Vavrock, he has one. It's a confidence bait for him. Almost everybody that gets one, they're like, oh yeah, there's just something in here that it's hard to put your finger on, but it works. And over the course of this winter, I think I'm going to have the ability to get a couple batches from Dadson. Probably going to do like a small run where we're going to do something fun with it. Johnny and Sam like doing stuff like that for their supporters, their followers. So I'm thinking we might do like a run of 54, and we'll number them, 2024, 1 through 54, and do something fun. We'll give a couple away. We'll sell a bunch, and we'll do something fun with it, because I think that's our style, and that's the style they want. We probably could just mass produce them and sell, a shit ton of them, but that's not the way Johnny Dadson works. So that's not what I would want to do with it. And truth be told, yeah, part of me is like, I don't want anybody to have one, because I just want to have them myself. But that's self-serving. It's if we want to help people, we have to try and get them out there. So it is about sharing a little bit while we're, trying to do that. But I do think there's something in that exclusivity that keeps, musky anglers chasing whatever that next bait is, whether it's a custom bait from, whoever. It's just, if you can have something that other people don't have, that's why we have man caves like I have, because you got to have that bait.
So is there like a certain liquor Johnny likes to drink or anything that could get us into his good graces that we could maybe send him, or maybe you yourself? You got a few to sell. I mean, is there any way we could get our names at the top of the list? Is kind of what I'm trying to get at here.
So I'll get your guys' names on the list. I'm not sure where they'll fall.
Yeah, hey,
You'll be on the list.
all we're asking
You'll be
for
on
is
the
a
list.
chance. All we're
Yeah,
asking
just
for
give
is
me
a
a
chance.
chance.
Yeah.
A nice bottle of whiskey shows up at your door and somehow our names get brought up, to the top 20 or something. And it is what it is. No, I'm just messing. When we had Vavrak on our podcast, he was talking about it, and I had known about it. I know Gus had known about it, and Brian too. But he like really, kind of solidified everything. It was kind of cool to hear. And we had a bucktail this year that crushed for us too, that Gus actually built himself, and Greg Thomas actually named it the Dolly Parton, big blade, small skirt. And that one was responsible for some pretty nice fish this year. So yeah, I mean, when you said it's people are saying it's just another bucktail, I don't know, man. I think when you find ones that really work, they can definitely separate themselves from the pack.
And they do. And that's like any bait. We had, a couple tubes this year, and I make my own tube rigs like a lot of guys that are, right into tubes do. And they just crushed. I mean, I got a couple tube rigs that got probably 20, 30 fish on them, and you just keep sliding new tubes on them, and they just work. And again, it's finding that balance on how you like to run them, whether it's a bucktail and it runs perfectly straight how you like. It's got the grind. If it's a tube, it's got that erratic motion. If it's a Medusa that you got just the perfect bend on and it just hops the way you like it. We all have those confidence lures, and that's why you sometimes have to go through hundreds of lures to get to those ones. And people have asked me, why don't you just build your own stuff? And I'm just like, because I just don't have the patience for it and the time. I'm just too busy. And if I can get the best stuff from the best builders, I'll just go that route, because that's just easier for me. And it takes a lot of that learning curve out of building. So I commend you guys for building your own baits, because I've dabbled in it in the garage. I've built a few bucktails and done some stuff, and then we go run them, and I was like, oh, this is trash. So it just ends up being parts for something else. But it can be, it can be fun, and I appreciate that side, because at heart, I'm an artist. I want to do, make stuff. And I think that's why the YouTube kind of fell into it for us, because it is a form of art as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And with that, like that bucktail, I mean, it's not like I made that one and it immediately was amazing. I think I made, prior to us going to Vermilion for the PMTT, I made like 12 bucktails or something like that, just giant bucktails. And I'm like, I don't know. They like big bucktails over there in Minnesota. And I just threw one after another. I think I was fishing with Dad that day, and I was just messing around, and I'm like, these all look great. And I'm like, I hope they work. And the first fish that bucktail caught something on was Max's in the PMTT at 48 3/4. And I'm like, well, I think we got something, because it raised a fish earlier in there. And yeah, but yeah, that's really cool what you're doing with the YouTube. We really enjoy it. We really appreciate it. And we also really appreciate your time tonight. I know you have to get up really early, and we don't want to hold you too late, even though I think we could probably talk for way too long. We're definitely going to have you back on. I kind of just figured that right from like when we started the first conversation, all the things that were going through my mind. I'm like, we're not going to get through everything at all. We already skipped through so many things that I was going to ask about Canadian fishing, baits, mods, this and that. And yeah. Okay. And I know you're very humble, but you are full of riches and just info on the industry. So, and we appreciate the content that you put out. So thank you very much.
Oh, I totally appreciate it. And we've accumulated a lot of knowledge from fishing with a lot of really great people up here. I've fished with, a lot of the locals, and I've fished with Pete Main, I fished with Jeremy Smith, and that's not just name dropping. That's stuff that we've done. We filmed some, shows with those guys, and it was cool for them to ask us to fish with them. And you learn stuff with everybody you're out with. I fished with Greg Thomas on Lake of the Woods, and I love fishing with anybody, and whether they're a brand new fisherman or, a seasoned professional, you're going to learn. And if you can share that's a benefit to everybody. And I just think that trying to be humble and, be responsible in this sport is going to help, go a long way for all of us. It's real easy to just sit on social media and do grip and grins all the time. And yeah, those are fun. We do some of those, but I posted a picture the other day of, one of those half underwater, half above water shots. I love that kind of cool. Again, it's that artsy stuff that it's just something different, and it's trying to show a different side of, the musky world. And for us, it's all about just, being ourselves and having fun. And I think what you guys are doing with the podcast, you can see that it's real and it's fun and you guys enjoy it. And I just think that kind of stuff's going to just keep rising to the top. And yeah, let's revisit this sometime in the spring before we get going on our season up here. And maybe we can talk some strategies for Canada then.
Sure. Yeah, we would love to definitely do that. So we'll definitely be back in touch. So again, Glenn, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. And hopefully your winter isn't too bad. I'm hoping ours isn't too harsh on us.
Well, hopefully not. Right now we're kind of into that, looking forward to trout season, which starts January 1st for lake trout. That's kind of the next big season for everybody up here. So we'll be out. We got some plans to do some cool filming for that. And we'll throw a few videos up over the course of the winter of some of our, a little bit of excursions out in the backwoods up here in Canada, which I think will be fun and kind of passes our winters a little bit too. And for any of the listeners that are around the Minnesota show, Dave and I'll definitely be down there in March. So, feel free to come up, say hello, and we appreciate that. And if we happen to see one of you guys at one of the shows, that would be great as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'll for sure be at the Minnesota one, and I think Gus will be too. So hope to run into you there or buy you a beer for coming on tonight. That'd be great.
Yeah, let's make some plans to at least hook up there for at least a few minutes, and we'll kind of touch base and make some plans for another meeting here. But no, I truly appreciate it, guys. And like I say, it's great to just keep sharing this kind of stuff with the listeners. I know I talk to so many of them, and they appreciate stuff that you guys do and the stuff that we do.
Awesome. Right on, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it.
Have a good night, fellas.
All right, guys. Well, that was a fantastic interview with Glenn McDonald. We cannot thank him enough for coming on and chopping it up with us fellas. Let's do a little roundtable discussion, shall we? Brian, what'd you take away from the interview?
Well, many things, but one thing would be that he had a lot of success on a suic, bait that's not traditionally used up there. You hear a lot about bucktails and bulldogs, medusas being thrown, but he's kind of experimented with all sorts of baits. If you look at his Instagram, he's got every one that's ever been built, it seems. So kind of makes me excited to bring a box of our stuff that works in the Northwoods, Wisconsin, and see what success we have with it up there. Gus, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree there with all the baits. He uses like just so many lures. It's crazy because I'm with you there. It seems like everyone who goes there to catches fish on bucktails, and that's about it. But I guess usually I always talk to some people who go there during bucktail season. But I'd say a big takeaway is kind of hearing about his success on fishing Canadian waters differently. Like he was just talking about pulling off a structure a little bit, like not doing the thing where if there's a milk jug on a reef, you cast to the milk jug, like they'll cast off of it first. Because I mean, I know technology's changed, but it just seems like they're hitting spots with a little bit more technical approaches. And I definitely can kind of relate to that. I definitely try and do that up here. And then I also struggle a few times where I just go right into a spot and just jam the boat in. And maybe part of the times where we're sitting over the fish and that's no bueno. So that was a good thing to kind of hear about. And I'm kind of excited to bring that into how I work the boat this next coming season and work spots a little differently that maybe we've worked 1,000 times. Say it's on our home waters, the same spot. We pull up into the same area and do it the same, and just got to try it a little differently. I think that might be the ticket on certain days. So, Max, what'd you take away from this interview?
I had a handful of takeaways. I think first and foremost, pretty crazy to hear about his time being in a rock band and lighting up
Yeah,
some local bars up there. That was definitely a curveball. Wasn't expecting that, so that was really cool to hear about that. You know, you take so much time to dedicate it towards musky fishing. It's good to hear, other people's hobbies every once in a while. So that was just, made elevated the coolness even more in my book. Thought that was sweet. And then I know we were kind of joking around, but honestly appreciated his tips on, some American etiquette heading up to Canada and crossing the border. Always good to get a little bit of a refresher on there. Because I think it's almost inevitable at this point that we're going to be trying hard to do a trip up to Canada next year. Summer gets really crazy with your guiding schedule and Brian and I's work schedule plus fishing these tournaments now. So we're gonna definitely do our best. I feel like it would be definitely a really fun trip, and might as well give it a whirl now that we got some people up there that could probably help us out a little bit, maybe steer us in the right direction. I don't know. If we did a trip up there for 4 or 5 days of fishing, you think we would just, I guess, bring our own boat and just give it a spin right from day one, or how do you guys think we would approach that trip?
I would like to do that. I think it'd be fun to tackle it on our own. Obviously, there's a lot of obstacles within the lake and not slamming that puppy up onto a big reef. But I don't know. I always felt like the way to do it would be if you have, let's just say, 4 or 5 full days of fishing. Your first day, you get out with a guide, kind of learn the ins and outs, general way of the lake. And then your next 3, 4, 5 days, you're out on your own, learning new spots, developing your own strategies. So I don't know. I guess it depends where you stay and all that too, and what part of the lake you're on. But
Or what lake you're on in
yeah, what
general,
lake?
right?
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, yeah, it's not like we got just because it's their first time in Canada, we got to go to Lake of the Woods or Eagle. I mean, it
Laxul,
sounds like there's Laxul, there's Wabagoon,
Cedar.
Cedar. Sounds like a lot of options up there that often probably get overlooked by many anglers. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the one thing for sure I'd always want to be watching for are those rocks, the dangerous rocks, because it sounds like lakes like Lake of the Woods differ in height. I know they had that crazy, I don't know if that was this spring, like that large runoff, and the previous spring it was maybe.
Think I remember seeing stuff
They
on
had
social
like
media.
the flooding up in Lake of the Woods. Yeah, stuff like that can make it a little sketchy for a first timer going in with just like one lake chip and potentially running into an island, a submerged island or something like that. But no, I think we'd have enough context to make sure that we don't run into shore. But
Yeah. Hopefully you're staying at a spot on the lake where like you don't need to burn across, a large sum of the lake to get to your spots, and hopefully you can just kind of putt from spot to spot and not harm the boat. But
yeah, well, we got tips from the guru as well, where like once you get out of base camp, you almost have like a certain line you take every single day, and it probably grows for when you go to spots further away from camp, but you almost have like that main highway passage where you always take
mhm.
that and then you branch off of it left and right. And I mean, I think as long as you don't pull the old phone out and pull a Greg Thomas and put that baby on an island, I think we'll be all right. I don't know if you guys remember listening to that in one of Greg's latest podcasts. That was pretty funny to listen
Did he
to.
have to get out and push it off, or did it just scratch up the boat?
I don't know how much detail he put into that.
Yeah, it's no, it would be a really fun trip though. I think it's something that's definitely on our radar for next year. So we'll see if we can make that happen. All right, well let's maybe just chat on kind of what's going on now. I mean, we got ice on most lakes. It looks like, Gus, up there. I know the weather has been very unseasonably warm, so I know some of the big lakes still, from what it sounds like, people aren't venturing out too far on. Looks
Mm-hmm.
like the forecast coming ahead here doesn't look any better to make any more ice, or really just kind of hoping at this point we're not losing a bunch or making things sketchy that don't need to be sketchy. But I'm looking to get up there, and like I said in the intro, bending the rod a little bit, catching some panfish. So hopefully we're able to make that happen.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have any issues on like amount of ice on the lakes that we want to go to, as long as we do keep it small. There's definitely large lakes that are going to be sketchy even as of Christmas, because it's warming up again. And we just got snow a little bit this week, and it's before this warm up. And I don't know, it depends on how much rain we get. If it doesn't rain, we'll probably hold off on it, and we'll have a semi-white Christmas. If it rains a bunch and stays at that 40-degree range for those 2 days, maybe like it says, it could get ugly again and muddy and kind of just gross. I think mostly it just sucks because there's not enough snow to make snowmobile travel accessible,
Yeah,
so just
right.
going out ice fishing, we're gonna have to do a lot of walking and yeah, so
There's
that's gonna be
nothing like the rude awakening of ice fishing when you're hauling like hundreds of pounds of gear on your back
Oh
and
yeah,
dragging
it's
it.
tough. I mean, I think still as of this point, I've only been out once, and that day we fished two lakes. I don't remember if I said it on the last podcast, but each lake had a hill up and down where we parked the car to get on the lake. And when we're
Oh,
done with each one, I'm hauling up that big sled with the shanty, the auger, the full bait bucket, all the the tip ups and rods that I brought. And man, that's freaking tough. That was a rude awakening on the old legs. I thinking I'm getting
Uphill
them.
both ways.
Yeah, I've been getting all that, those reps in this year of hucking big lures, but I didn't really do too much with the old legs for working out, and I felt that one pretty good in the old thighs. And
Cardio coming
yeah,
up to bite you a little bit.
just a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. That's about all I got for an ice ice report here from a guy who doesn't really ice fish a whole ton. I'm sure we'll chat a little bit about it more in the coming weeks. Maybe when after you and I get out, Max, and then obviously we'll chit chat about our little ice fishing bender weekend in February that we're gonna have, and possibly one more here. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds good.
yeah, I think that's about it for the weekly report. I just want to again thank Glenn for coming on. That was a great talk we had, and he's just an overall great guy. I mean, you could expect nothing less from a Canadian for sure. He's super polite, very humble, and just overall great to talk to.
yeah, I'd love to be able to get him on. If we finally get like our trip planned and we got the dates, I'd love to get him on the pod before that and kind of dive deeper into Canada. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully he'd be kind enough to just chat with us on the phone, if it's not on the pod, and show us the ways, where to go, what to do, how to
Mm-hmm.
treat ye old Canadians.
Yeah, sounds like you can light it up there, and just as fast as you can light it up, I've heard some horror stories from people making the travels up there and going, you know, oh for whatever and stuff on 7 days of fishing, and it's like, oh,
We're not going to talk about that. I'm not expecting to go there and catch fish. I'm just there to take in the sights. That's all we go there for.
well, there you go. Yeah, yeah, set the bar real low on Canada. There's no other reason we want to, leave northern Wisconsin just to go see some other sites.
Just want to see some boulders along the shoreline. That's it.
No, we don't want just an average of 42 to 48-inch fish all the time or anything.
No, no, no.
Oh boy. So before going ahead on stuff, anybody got anything else to add? Anybody do anything crazy over the holidays here?
Well, I guess once this drops, the next day on Friday, I will be down in Florida, near Everglades City, doing some fly fishing, maybe a little conventional fishing with my dad, getting out with Captain Daryl down there. Gus and I got out with
Yeah.
him, what, 3 years ago or so?
Yeah, you put
A
me on
while
my
ago, back in college, yeah.
biggest snook on the fly.
Yeah, yeah,
That
that
was
was
pretty
pretty
cool.
wild catch.
Yeah, that was nuts. So yeah,
You
we'll see.
you sight fishing them down there?
That's the goal. Yeah, we're actually gonna fish in the afternoon because the tide will be better to sight fish them. So we'll
Sweet.
see. It's always kind of hit or miss depending on the tide and obviously the wind. It's been really windy down there with cold temps. So hopefully the wind kind of holds off for us, but we'll see. Either way, I'm
What's
sure we'll find some
what's the targeted species?
reds and snook. He said we can look for some juvenile tarpon and stuff, so that'd be pretty sweet.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
nice.
be awesome.
Yeah.
You gonna go full influence there, get in the water, hold up the fish, put the fly rod in your mouth.
I think I don't know if Gus was with me when we asked him about that, but he said like especially during prime tarpon season, he doesn't let anybody do that because the sharks are just like going rampant around
Oh
there.
yeah, no,
I
thank
mean,
you. I wouldn't want
No.
to. I know they do that with like bonefish and permit and stuff. I guess, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
since
It,
tarpon, you have to water release unless they're a certain
yeah,
size,
if it's
and
a
if
juvenile,
it's
you
a
can bring in
small
the
one,
boat.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
I
dude,
just don't know the size limit, but
I don't know how those people go up like chest deep in that water and take those pictures like Gus. I mean, catching those kudas down in uh where were we at?
Key West.
Islamorada, Key West area.
Yeah,
Um watching how those sharks acted in 2.5, 3 feet of water when they saw a cuda hooked gave me enough
yeah.
reason to never step foot in
It wasn't just
any of
one
those
that was
backwaters. I
when
was
yours
like
got
three of them.
I know I was just about to say when yours got bit, it wasn't just one. One got it, and there was like I think there's more than three surrounding us
Do you
when that
remember when they
happened.
pinned us into the island? And he was remember that? Like how the Cuda made a run to the mangroves and we had to like beach the boat and the Cuda was on. I couldn't get him in, and the sharks were like trying to get
Oh
up into like
yeah,
a half a foot of water. They were literally like pinning him in. And our guide was like
yeah.
flooring the motor in reverse, and I'm like fighting this fish, and it was
that
just
sounds
pure
fun.
chaos.
It was a lot of fun.
Because like I mean, barracuda fishing it's not musky fishing, but it's kind of close where you're retrieving baits super fast or whatever and getting these crazy strikes, and then the power of the fish is so crazy, but like you have to horse them in because those chances of a shark coming in hot is like so good. I mean, I had the biggest fish of that whole trip on, and it came in just completely bit in half. It was like a
Mhm.
55, 60-inch barracuda.
I think it
Jeez.
was an
And
estimated 60. Yeah,
yeah. Well,
it
we
was
got that. I
big.
mean, I reeled in the head, and the head was significantly larger than, all the ones we had caught. So it was just like crazy
Yeah, it was like a
seeing that all
36
happen.
incher from like the middle of the body to the mouth.
It was
And
a big fish.
yeah,
I couldn't believe that a shark took that thing down that easily and
wasn't even that
No
much
got
bait's too
bigger
after it.
big.
of a shark. Yeah.
Yeah, no bait's too big. Saltwater fishing's just it's so much fun. Such a good break from doing the type of shit that we do, during the
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
during the
yeah.
winter, and like knowing that you're gonna go down there and have
You're
a
at least
few
gonna see them.
yeah.
You're not just gonna be out there for 12 hours and not see a sign of life.
Yeah.
Just grinding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
and those saltwater fish, man, they just got a different power to
Yeah.
them. So that'll be fun. You'll have to keep us up to date on how that all goes down there.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully I got something to post about by day's end. We'll see.
Yeah, do a little something for the Mott page that just hit 1K. Not a big deal.
Shout out.
Not a big deal. Shout out to everybody that follows the Mott page. Thank you all.
I know. We've been
Got to a
we've been
thou.
we've been quiet lately on that. We got to step our game up. I know we got some stuff in the works. I'll probably download some stuff, Gus, while I'm up north, and maybe do
Hmm.
a little bit of editing. over
Yeah,
in
Dang.
do a
January.
little
So
little file transfers, get out the old terabyte or two or whatever I got here disk and start
yeah,
looking at some footage here and yeah, put some stuff out there for everybody to watch.
I was going back through pictures from this summer, looking at all the different fish, like any normal 29-year-old guy does in his spare time. And I stumbled across a few pictures, and I was like, "What? Like, when did that fish get caught? Like, I don't even remember that one." And
Good problem to
it's
have,
just
I
kind of
guess.
funny. Yeah, no, I mean, it was great. It was just kind of funny because, like,
Uh,
we're just bouncing around to so many different lakes and places this year, and it was such a fun summer that, like, all of a sudden I'd stumble across a picture of a fish. It would take I'd always remember eventually, but it would kind of take me a second, like, wait, what? When was that? So
Yeah.
that was kind of funny.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's
I
good
got
stuff.
I got a lot of our B-roll failures still in my camera roll, just like minutes and minutes of video. So
There we go.
Keep
It's
hold on to
yeah.
those.
Yeah, get a blooper B-roll uh edit going to go on
yeah,
Instagram. I think the people would love that.
that would be pretty funny. Might have to.
Couple gritties, a couple football catches.
Hmm.
I don't know what else. Who knows what's in there? I mean, there's one in there from the fall bender weekend. I took a screenshot from a part of it where I'm like, whenever I got my hand out like this, asking for those Gardettos or
Oh yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, it could just be a B-roll of us snacking. The bite slow.
Nah, we don't need that.
Surprisingly, I have a lot of B-roll of that. I must eat a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Should we get into a few housekeeping podcast items?
Yeah, so with merch, we got some hoodies still left over. Not too many. There's a few sizes that are out of stock, but you can do some back ordering on that. You can still purchase them. And I do plan on in the near future, ordering some more and getting some different sizes as well. I know in the first original order, the smallest size we got were mediums, and there's a few people asking about smalls. So that's definitely in the works. Also, there's a good amount of glasses left as well. If you want to have some muskies on tap, pint glasses. So with that, you can find that merch on my guide webpage, which is www.sugsfishing.com, which has all the info on my guide service as well. And we kind of already talked about the muskies on tap hitting 1K for Instagram. Thank you all for that. But you can find us on Instagram at Muskies on Tap and my guide service at Suggs Fishing. And same with Facebook. Add me as a friend, Gus Manti, or my guide page, which is Suggs Fishing Guide Service. And if you want to get in touch with me directly as well, any DM on either of the socials works, or my phone number, which is 920-264-3816. And yeah, I think we just plan on getting out some videos here shortly for you guys to watch, get some content out as we were talking about. And I think that's it. So, you guys got anything else to add?
I wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Good New Year. I don't know if you touched on the fact that we won't be recording or putting out a podcast next week.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Um,
I don't think we're going to be able to. We weren't able to get a guest on well in advance enough, and I think it'll be too late. We'll have one after the New Year's right away, for sure. But this will be, I think, the last one of 2023, which is actually crazy to think about.
Damn, the birth
What a
year of
year.
Muskies on Tap. That's crazy,
Dang.
man. All from first pod, and now we're at 35, 34.
This is the 34th. Yep, episode 34. Which is pretty crazy.
Who'd have thunk we would have made even 34?
I don't know. I didn't really think so because if it didn't take off or anything, it was just going to be a weekly report, and we were probably going to end it by the end of the season. But a lot happened in the meantime. We had a lot of guests on, and plan to get a bunch more on as well. So that's pretty cool. Definitely want to thank you guys. Wouldn't have done it without you for sure.
There's no chance this thing was sustainable without people, listening and reaching out to us and kind of encouraging us to keep it up, or, saying that they're listening. That was always just really cool to hear that, because when we started, I don't know we didn't really have much for expectations, but it's definitely gotten to a point where I think we've enjoyed it, and, a lot. And the fact that people do tune in and listen is all the motivation to keep it rolling. So yeah, say overall 2023 was a great success. It was a lot of fun, a lot of really good memories.
Yeah, I agree. Really enjoyed the ride, met a lot of really great people. A lot of people that hopefully the timing's right and I'll be able to get out with you guys and fish with them. But yeah, obviously a lot more people in the industry looking to get on in this next year. But yeah, I guess kind of the big takeaway, and like we talked about, a lot of people in the pods, just meeting everybody in the industry and so many great people out there to converse with about musky and everything else. So it's been an awesome time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Despite some of the negativity that people can talk about in the muskie industry, we're seeing some pretty cool people. We're getting to talk to some pretty cool people, and we're meeting a lot of like really awesome people in this industry. I'm gonna hold dear all the friendships that we made this year and carry them on next year. Definitely hope to run into a lot of the listeners or some of the people that we had on the podcast over the winter, going to a couple of the shows. So I really look forward to that. And if you see one of us, Max, Brian, or myself walking around one of the expos, don't be afraid to come say hey. We'll probably be rocking a mod hoodie and whatnot with us as well. And we would love to come and chat with you guys. So with that, yeah, we appreciate everybody listening in on this year. This unless something magical happens and we put out like a 10-minute podcast or something to make the weekly pod continuous through this year, this will be the last one of 2023. So thank you all for listening, for whoever made it this long in this podcast. Because
Through all the rambling.
Yeah, it's like, all right, done with the Glenn McDonald interview and we're out. Probably happens to a good amount of people. So
Yeah.
Shout out to the beers who stayed.
Yeah, maybe we got to put like a different oh, never mind. That'd be, I said maybe we put like an outro, something for people to like an outro. Maybe not another quote per se, because I know that we've had some people reaching out about that, how funny that is and random that is. The fact that that's still kind of going on with the usually unrelated quotes, sometimes related. If you can find the relation, we appreciate you that you were digging hard enough to see that, that us looking up just some random quote from Ricky Bobby's Adventures from Talladega Nights.
We could just see who our true real listeners are and do a giveaway at the end of the pod. And right at the very end, we say a little secret something. And if they DM us back the answer, bam, giveaway.
Put some people in the drawing right here. Should we I think we should
We'll
give
probably
away
do for a giveaway.
We should give away a Mott glass, a Mott pint glass.
Yeah, maybe
to a
maybe
listener.
A pair of them. A little stocking stuffer.
Oh yeah. So let's I want to spitball here on the spot.
I got an idea off the top of my head.
Okay.
All right.
For all the listeners that are still with us.
Yeah. All right. So if you DM us a movie quote and we use it for the next podcast, that'll be the winner of the pint glass.
Yes.
So whatever movie quote we think's the funniest.
Some sort of quote that. Oh, sorry.
Like a clip. Yeah.
I was gonna say
it's like a YouTube link.
Yeah, just send us the YouTube link of the clip, and if it's like in a 4 or 5 minute video, because sometimes they're like that. If it's a full scene, just tell us the seconds or whatever that we should use. Gus, how long typically are the clips?
I mean, they can be short. You can have like a one-liner maybe to just kind of zing right into the beat drop, but typically I'm looking for like 10 to 45 seconds. I think we've had them up to like a minute ish. We'll cap it at 60 seconds probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
If you're gonna
And-
send us a 60-second clip, it better be a banger of all time.
mhm.
Jeez. Kids just don't want to go do the work, go through the videos. All right, yeah, you can just either DM us on. That was a good little giveaway on the spot there, boys.
Yeah,
Pat
figure.
ourselves on the back there. That was nice.
Who's ever
What
willing to listen to us this far, they gotta deserve something.
Showing
Oh
up.
yeah. Shout out to
Wow.
those people.
You can either DM us the link on Instagram on the Mott page. You can text me at 920-205-9192 as well. That's Max's cell phone.
Yep. Anybody from
Or
Mott will take it in.
Gus.
Yeah.
Or Gus's cell phone too.
Yep, for sure. Yeah.
Brian
I'm
only
looking forward to that.
Brian only gives out those digits to a certain select few.
Oh,
I can give
brother.
out my digits. Somebody really wants to hit the third number option.
Happens all too often for you, doesn't it, bud?
Nah. You're speaking crazy.
All right, Gus.
All right.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I think we can wrap this one up. So Brian, you want to take it away?
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Make sure to get those YouTube video submissions into Max or Gus or Mott page. If they are sent to the Mott page, I will be the main critic on that one. So choose wisely who you send it to. Everybody have a very happy, holly, Merry Christmas and New Year's. We will catch you guys after the break. Good luck to all the people ice fishing over the holidays. Stay safe out there. It's a little bit dicey. Shout out Glenn McDonald.
Shout out.
Shout out.
And what else we got? Hey, well, real quick, who do you guys got winning the college football playoff coming up on New Year's?
Man.
I'm Roll Tide.